Hello, everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, Canada beat Curacao to qualify for the 2023 Gold Cup. Gabriele Corbo rejoins CF Montreal. Joel Waterman signs a new contract with the club, and Canada Soccer explains its controversial decisions in front of the Heritage Committee. That and a lot more on episode 124 of The Ball is Round. And as usual, I'm joined by my friends Eve and Elias. Eve, how are you today?
It's Sunday, so it's snowy, which was a shock, but hanging in there. How are you?
I'm fine. Elias, how's it going?
Yeah, kind of disappointed by the snow. It was a bit of a last minute surprise, but hopefully it's the last one of the year before we get some spring going. So
I agree.
other than that, doing all right.
We got a relief and we thought it was done, but as usual in Montreal, whenever you think it's done, you get a snowstorm right after. But I'm not gonna call it a storm because
it's just
no, it wasn't a storm.
It's just snow. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully this is it for this year for 2023. Guys, I have a question before we start. Do you miss club football whenever there's international breaks? Because I love watching Canada. I love watching, whenever 11 plays.
No.
But no, you don't?
No, I like the change in pace. Obviously, like MLS continued on. They just keep on trucking. But overall, like I was glad that Montreal was on a bye week. Although it wouldn't have made a difference since most players would have had called up or injured. But no, I like the change in pace. I kind of like that everything kind of comes to a halt a little bit.
Really? Elias?
Yeah, I do.
Can't stand international breaks.
Okay, thank you.
I understand they're necessary, and I understand you need some kind of familiarity with the national team. You have qualifiers, stuff like that. I understand the need for them. Doesn't mean I have to like them. And even though I don't like international breaks, we're gonna get into this later, but I also don't like that MLS had a match week during an international break. But
that sucks
for
some
a whole other
teams.
bag of cats. But exactly, it's and plus, someone who follows CF Montreal and Barcelona, two teams that almost always have at least half a dozen injuries each during an international break. It's nice to see that only one CF Montreal, two or three players were called up. So I mean, the risk of injury is reduced significantly, but there's always a risk.
Man, I'm like you, Elias. I just, I love watching Canada. I love watching when there's something to play for. I'm sorry, but the Nations League is never going to be taken seriously. I'm never going to take it seriously. I don't know why. It's not a competition that I like. But you know what? If we get a trophy, I'll be very, very happy for sure. But it's for me a second tier or third tier trophy, in my opinion. But not having a game of Montreal and Marseille is like, no, that doesn't work for me. But you know what? We had a game for Canada, and that was great. And you know what? After that game against Curacao, Canada officially qualified with that win, that 2-0 win in Willemstad. They qualified to the 2023 Gold Cup. Now, prior to the game, John Herdman said that the team had to keep growing and reach the next level, and that next level will be to lift trophies within CONCACAF. Something that we repeated quite a few times here on The Ball is Round. So I'm happy to see that John and I and all of us are aligned and have the same objectives. So that's kind of nice to hear. Now, John Herdman started that game with a starting 11 that was as follows. So you had Milan Borjan in goal, Scott Kennedy, Derek Cornelius, Steven Vittoria as central defenders, Alfonso Davies as a left wing back, Richie Larea as a right wing back, Kone and Eustachio and Osorio in the middle of the pitch, and Jonathan David and Kyle Laren up front. Eve, what did you think about that starting 11, knowing that we know that Miller was injured and also Alistair Johnston was suspended?
Yeah, so there was certainly a lot of change compared to the last time we saw the men's national team playing. Um, a lot of change. That being said, I do rate. I like Derek Cornelius, generally speaking, so I was happy to see him get another look in. This was really like Ishmael Kone's first official start with the club, or not the club, the national team. Sorry, although he has been obviously featured for them in the past. And then we had some players who are in excellent form in Europe, like Jonathan David as well as Kyle Larin, and I was totally unsurprised to see them.
Yeah, exactly. And Elias called it the Kyle Larin going to Valladolid being a good move. I was very skeptical, but Elias was right. Elias, tell me, when you looked at that bench, okay, you have on the bench you had Adegugbe, Akinola, Brim, Buchanan, Hebert, Hutchinson, Kay, Luturi, McGill, Sinclair, and Zator. Did you think that it was a bit thin, or was there enough quality for you for John Herdman?
Yes, with regard to maybe some kind of lack of depth, yes and no. I think that there's some good options on the bench, but I think after those good options, there's a pretty steep drop off. So I think that's something that has to be maybe looked at, and that could be a sore spot, especially if you get into a competition where you have multiple games a week, and then you have to deal with the fatigue and everything. But overall, I think that when you have a decent amount of selection in each position off the bench, that's always a good thing. My concern lies maybe in the third or fourth choice of a position where then maybe you get a little bit where you're there's a little that's left to be desired. But overall, I think that depth shouldn't be a problem, especially if you have these single elimination games where you need maybe one or two substitutes in a position to really rectify any potential issue. So we didn't see too much from that in terms of substitutions because they kind of happened and the game was already killed. But overall, I think that options off the bench are looking pretty good for Canada.
Now, of course, the game started, and John Herdman, I thought that Canada was going to go and really dominate right from the get-go, and it took a bit of time until we saw Canada really take control of things, and we had to wait until the 10th minute mark to see the first dangerous action with Jonathan Osorio dribbling his defender, laying the ball back to Jonathan David, whose shot missed the target. Did you expect it to take that long for Canada to be dangerous, Elias?
You could tell kind of by the way the game started that this was really just we have to win this game, so let's just win the game and get out of here kind of attitude, right? They didn't really come in here to win 7-0 or anything. They weren't giving it full beans. So I understand why that may have contributed to a bit of a slow start. Maybe not a slow start, but more of a bit of a dry start, if you will, right? Because that was the first real acceleration. You're like, oh my God, there's signs of life, right? And then as the half progressed, it got better. But this this shouldn't be a barometer for the level that Canada can play at. This was more of this felt almost like a chore for them, right? Where they had to kind of go through the motions. They got their win, they got their 3 points, and now they can focus on Honduras at BMO Field. So I wasn't impressed in the first half. I mean, they got what they needed. They got the 2 goals. They ended up getting, they were up a man at that point too. So it's, you're fine. But I really didn't see any kind of willingness to take control of the game. And that may have been due to preparation. That may have been due to them focusing on Honduras instead of Curacao. But it was really just there.
Yeah. No, I agree that it seemed like they didn't really want to be there in a way. But I think we're being a bit too harsh, right, Eve?
I mean, that pitch was so compact, and it seemed as though I'm not sure if it was waterlogged or something like
It
that.
looked like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's my best guess. So not only that, like it did make it difficult for playing conditions, and that required some adjustments. So no, I was not surprised that it took like 10-ish
Really?
minutes Canada. And yes, no, I was not surprised at all.
We played games in Cayman Islands or in Guyana where there was a lot more motivation and excitement than this game.
Stop. Are you comparing Curacao to the Cayman Islands?
No, that's
I'm
not
so
what
sorry.
saying.
Like
I'm saying
okay,
that
I was about to say like that's super disrespectful.
What I said is like games in Cayman Islands or in whatever you want, Guyana, whatever it is, that was a lot more motivation than a game in Curacao, who's a much higher level. And for me, that's a bit weird to see a game like Curacao being a bit snubbed in a certain way. But
I mean, I'd have to go back kind of and check a little bit because I'm not 100% sure like what the windows were during that time. I know the last time that they played Cayman Islands, however, I think that was in Florida, wasn't it?
I think that was in Florida, but Guyana
Yeah,
was in Guyana.
Yeah,
Guyana was in Guyana.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. All the same, like motivation, I think for a World Cup is going to be different than motivation for, like you said, Nations League, which is at this early stage a little hard to take seriously. And kind of like Elias said, you do have, of course, an eye on your final home match, which is on Tuesday night. Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Tuesday night. And that's against Honduras, who is second in the group, and Canada cannot lose that match if they want to proceed to the next stage. So I was not at all surprised. Like any number of factors, I was not surprised.
Okay, I think you're being too nice for once. Eve, you're nice. Okay, so but Eve, I have another question for you. David had that first chance. And you know what? He's been criticized a lot during the World Cup and after the World Cup because his performances were subpar. But he bounced back very, very well for Lille, scoring 11 goals in 13 games since the World Cup. How important is he for the national team? How strong is he mentally also?
Yeah, his importance cannot be understated. And especially when you take into account his young age on top of it, he's a player who's still going to continue getting better and will likely sooner rather than later be playing, even more high-level games than he's currently playing with Lille. So I was really, really pleased to see him bounce back as he did. There was that first shot and, of course, other activity later on in the match. But I thought for the whole time he was on the pitch, he was an effective player. He contributed a lot, whether it was in the goal scoring phases of play or even outside of it, in helping out his teammates and contributing. So I was really, really pleased, and obviously a good sign as well, just of that mentality that the Canadian national team rode to qualify for the World Cup seems to still be intact.
Exactly. And you know what? He continued on that same route. A few minutes later, after dominant spell in possession by Canada, Richie Larea gave an exquisite pass to David at the near post, and a young striker pushed it at the back of the net. Easy goal, Eve, or it's like it looks easier than what it was?
It was a great cross. Like you could tell the defender facing it, I think was kind of afraid to touch it because, the cross was coming in so deep, and it's one of those where as a defender, if you touch it, there's like just as much of a chance you're going to put it in the back of your own net as anything else. So I think it was a great cross, great vision from Richie Larea, and certainly at that range, of course, Jonathan David, there's only one outcome. He's going to score.
Yeah, he is. He is lethal up front. Exactly. Now, Elias, you look, another player has also been criticized by Canadian fans. It's Richie Larea. In this game, he looks very lively and very good, right?
This is one of the best spells with the Canadian national team that I've seen Richie Larea play. He was, in my opinion, he was one of the mans of the match because he was really kind of every time that offense would stall or that offense would kind of just get a little bit complacent, he would be there to provide a burst of pace or a shot in the arm, and that's something that is extremely valuable, especially with all that talent on the field. having someone like Richie Laryea, all this, world-class talent. You have, the leading scorer in Ligue 1, and you have the best fullback and one of the best fullbacks in the world. But someone like Richie Laryea is there because he really is a spark plug, right? He is this energetic presence on the other flank that sometimes people forget about because you have Alphonso Davies and you have Jonathan David that are on a bit further on the left side. And so that right side kind of doesn't get as much love or as much attention from the opposing defenses. So that's where Richie Laryea kind of steps in and really complicates life. And that's what you saw in the first goal. And it was a very nice, change of pace from him because he has struggled with the national team. But this should be his standard, right? With the national team, this is his role. And, as far as competition for that spot, it's pretty much his. So this should be.
There's Johnston.
There's Johnston, but again, Johnston being
but he usually plays as a right central back.
Exactly.
It depends.
And that's how John Herdman tends to prefer him.
If they play 3-back, if they play 4-back, 5-back, it depends. But with Johnston being able to play as a central defender, Richie Laryea in that right flank has a very solid shot at making himself a first name starter. And performances like this have to become the standard for him to, continue to find minutes, or else, there's people like Tayshaun Buchanan who can play that side. People like Alistair Johnson, obviously, who can play that side. So if Richie Laryea isn't at that level, there's other options for Herdman. But the spot right now is his for the taking. And you just need more performances from him of that caliber, because that was a very solid game.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the best games I've seen Richie Laryea play. Now, of course, he had some very good games too. It's not the best, but it's one of the best, of course. Now, unfortunately, right after Canada scored, we didn't see much about of the national team until the 37th minute. There wasn't really any dangerous attacks or anything. Curacao was really playing very well defensively. Again, I felt that the Canadian national team was not really lively, was not really taking risks, was not really pressing too much. And what happened at the 37th minute when Ishmael Kone really drove the ball forward and was fouled by Gary, who got his second yellow card and was sent off. It's a logical sanction here. But let's admit that the first yellow that he had in the beginning of the game with Laryea, it was avoidable, right, Eve?
Well, it felt really to me, it felt like the ref was not in the mood for a CONCACAF match, and he was like, you know what, this is our first little tete-a-tete between two players, so I'm just gonna set the tone right now. Here's a yellow card, of course, to Richie Laryea. As much as we love him, he loves a yellow card. So I kind of felt a little bit bad for him. That second booking was absolutely a yellow card any day of the week. But I felt a little bit, the first one I was like, geez, come on. You know where you're reffing. You're reffing in CONCACAF, my guy.
Yeah, but you know what? What's really nice about it is that Richie Laryea was able to play the rest of the game without being carded again. And you know what? That's something that's really good, knowing his temper and knowing the way he plays.
I was so worried. I worried so hard. I was like, it's so early.
Same. Elias, you look at that yellow card. Was it a way for the referee to really, I don't know, to prove to anyone that he's the boss, or a certain way to control the game a bit?
I mean, that does happen from time to time, right? Referees look to assert their dominance, especially if it's a game that has the potential to be physical, which it was, right? Even after the yellow card, it's still a physical game, and it was still, Curacao wasn't giving an inch, and they played very strongly and they held their ground. And that's something that, maybe the ref was aware of, or maybe it was discussed in pre-game. You can't really be in the head of the ref to understand the intricacies of a decision, but the fact that he gave the yellow card both sides sent a very clear message that, look, this is no tolerance. And especially when someone gets a second yellow, there's always hindsight, like, oh, the first one really shouldn't have been, or ifs and buts and maybes and all these hypotheticals. And that happens almost every time someone gets a second yellow, because you always look back and go like, well, if that hadn't happened, or if it was this much less aggressive, then it wouldn't have been a yellow, and then he'd still be in the game. So it's you always have this look back, and it happens. It's going to happen again into perpetuity for the history of soccer, as long as there is the 2 yellow card rule. So I mean, it was a little early, I find, for him to give out yellows, but I understand why he did it, and that's part of soccer, right? That happens. It's gonna happen, and it's gonna happen. Again, probably within this week, somewhere in the world, it's gonna happen again, and someone can be like, "Oh, that first yellow was soft."
Mm-hmm.
It's
very
it's normal.
Yeah, exactly.
This is soccer. Exactly. Now, obviously when you go, when you're 11 versus 10, you obviously think that you're going to dominate the game. And as a fan, you look at the game and you're like, okay, you know what? We're going to be able to dominate and score goals and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it didn't really happen much. Now, it did create some extra chances, and it happened just a few minutes later after that red card. After a press by Alphonso Davies on a Curacao player, that player lost the ball close to the box. It fell to Jonathan David, who passed it directly to Kyle Larin. Kyle Larin, one touch, just redirects it directly in a side netting, and he becomes the most prolific scorer in Canadian soccer history. He's tied right now with John Catliff for the all-time men's national team record for international goals. It's all games, including Olympics. How massive has he been, Elias, under John Herdman, Kyle Larin?
Oh, it almost goes over your head just how important he's been and just how consistently important he's been, right? Because
but think about pre-John Herdman.
Exactly.
He wasn't that good.
He was like a non-factor. No,
exactly.
I was like, why is Kyle Larin out there?
Yeah. And he's had this kind of revival, but not just like, again, he's in the form of his life right now, Valladolid, and he's become like a cult hero in Spain. But under
cult hero that much?
They have masks of his face that they're wearing at the
really? Wow. Okay. You should bring a picture next time. Like we can put it on the stream.
Well, I mean, with how many points he's won them, they were in a relegation battle now, and now they're closer to mid-table than last place. So
wow.
I mean, it's been he's completely like he's the fans have fallen in love with him, and it's really fun to watch. But under John Herdman, he's been this kind of reliable target man, and that entire sequence kind of shows what everybody wants to see from that front line, if you will. Even though Davies played on the flank, that David Davies Larin attacking trident, if you will, is that we want to see the high energy, win the ball up high, and convert immediately. And that was a very good example of it. And Kyle Larin, with someone like Jonathan David, with someone like Alphonso Davies, should be feasting as a proper poacher target man type striker. So hopefully this is a sign of them really starting to click, because you saw moments of it during the World Cup, you saw moments of it during the qualifiers, but it wasn't really consistent. And again, against Curacao, it wasn't necessarily consistent, but when it works exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So if they could find a way to actually have this for an entire game, or God forbid, an entire tournament, then yes, silverware is absolutely on the table, because this quality is the difference between winning silverware and going home early. So absolutely, I hope to see more of this, because Kyle Larin is a man in form right now. He's a man on fire, and he's, in terms of, if you look at overall form, he's one of the best Canadian players in the world right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's with the quality of La Liga and the way he's playing, he's at that level where he's one of the most informed strikers in Spain, which is saying something when you have a league with Antoine Griezmann and Memphis Depay and Lewandowski and Benzema. So
and Joselu.
So yes, absolutely, more of this, please, more of this. It looks great.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say, Yves, because it's been a while that we haven't seen, Jonathan David and Kyle Larin playing up front as a pair in a game, right? We've always seen, John Herdman trying to, trying to mix things up, putting Davies up front with David, putting changing things up. Sometimes Larin was on the bench, and you had Buchanan up front. Do you think that that pairing should always be in important games up front
No,
as a duo?
not necessarily. I think it depends on the opposition. 100%. I don't think like there's ever necessarily a 100% pairing that has to exist, because sometimes you can benefit from having more pacey forwards, with dribbling capacity, like Davies and Buchanan, amongst others, for example. So I really do think it depends on your opposition. Certainly, as well, you can't negate the aerial ability, actually, of either of them, surprisingly. So I think that also is an important factor to take into consideration. So I am always really, really hesitant to say it's always the pairing that should be up top, because so much depends on, who stands in the way of them and the goal. Or Canada in general, I should say, in the goal. But they definitely looked like they were very much in sync last night. They looked like they were on the same page, and they had that strong chemistry that they had carried really for the last, year and a half.
I believe that it's all about automation in a certain way. Like, having the same starting 11, like most of the time, really helps you develop, that chemistry a bit more. And so that the passes are done in a kind of robotic way, just because, you're used to the movement of every players, right? So, but I agree with you that sometimes you have to adjust to the opposition, but you should have a base first, and from that base you can change. And for me, the base
Sure,
should
sure.
have, Larin and David up front. But you know what, I of course respect your opinion, of course, for sure. But
Mhm.
but that's what I think from my side. Now, unfortunately, after that goal, Canada didn't capitalize further. They did have a couple of
Nope.
chances, with Eustachio crossing the ball. Magnificent cross, by the way, for the head of Osorio, who flicked it to a running Alfonso Davies, who made a mess of it. It's not often that we see Alfonso Davies missing these kinds of chances, right, Eve?
No.
Love the pause.
No.
Love it.
I'm like, I'm like, oh. I don't know. I felt like in the second half, he didn't look 100% like himself.
Yeah.
I felt like he really dropped off in the second half. And I'm not sure what it was. But I felt like there was a big difference in the Alfonso Davies of the first half. And like, God forbid, if I talk about Alfonso Davies of 2022, huge difference again. And I thought, like, in the second half, I'm not sure. He's played a ton of matches recently with Bayern. Obviously, I don't know if it's like a fatigue thing, because obviously it's quite a journey that he's made to join up with the national team. But overall, yeah, no, not normal for sure.
Elias, I don't know if you want to add something on Eve's hesitation or whatever.
No,
I love Alfonso Davies, his national treasure, but like,
doesn't look like it.
When you screw it up, you screw it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
to be clear, I love him so much.
It is. Yeah, you gotta call it like it is sometimes, right? And he didn't have the most consistent of games, right? When he was on it, he was absolutely on it. But sometimes, you could tell that he's playing every single game, and now at Bayern, and the travel from Munich to Florida and then to Curacao is not exactly an easy trip to make. And there's a lot of Europeans, a lot of players coming from Europe now, which is a nice sight to see, but it's also not the easiest commute now to make. So especially when it's a 1 week training camp, it's a 1 week international window. So it's not like you can get to camp for a week, settle in, kind of get rid of any jet lag, and then go to your game. They were at camp for 2 days before they went to Curacao.
Exactly, 2 or 3 days.
It's not the easiest move. And you could kind of tell that a lot of the players who play in Europe kind of started to get a little woozy towards the hour mark, right? And that's not a coincidence. So again, hopefully, as much as I don't like international breaks, when you do an international break, you have to do it right. So don't just give them a week to play 2 games because it's gonna
Yeah.
mess them up, and then they're gonna have to go back to Europe, and then the jet lag again, and they're gonna have to readjust themselves, and it's not an easy few
Yeah.
weeks for the Canadian player, or even the North American players, the CONCACAF players that play in Europe. It's not an easy few weeks
Oh, of course,
getting
you have
there
No.
and
to
then coming
travel. You
back,
have
right?
so much traveling
With all
time.
this
It's
travel,
crazy.
but all this travel over such a short period of time.
Yeah.
That's also the thing, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're an MLS player, you're used to traveling across North America, which is a much bigger continent than say a German player traveling across Germany, which is Montreal to Ottawa is across the country basically.
You know
So
what?
it's
You could ask the question to Scott Arfield if you want to.
that'd be a good question
Well,
to ask.
we know how he felt about it, evidently. And
No.
now he's at home in Scotland. Look, he gets to stay in one place. So if that works better for him, power to him. I can
Whatever
barely
works.
drag my ass to commute to the office 2 days a week. So
Exactly.
Yeah, believe me, we know. Now, Elias, what about that flick on from Osorio? I'm gonna say it. For me, he was the man of the match. Jonathan Osorio had an amazing game. I've I've rarely seen Jonathan Osorio in that form with the Canadian national team, and he was everywhere, everywhere. Am I
Yeah.
exaggerating?
No, you're not. It was a good day for begrudgingly. It was a good day for the Toronto boys. They were very effective, and you could tell that they were on it today. Remember that Canada's still in a relatively transitional period. There's a lot of older players that will not be at the next World Cup.
Yeah.
And so there's midfield spots, and there's spots in that starting 11 for the taking for people like Jonathan Osorio, Mark Anthony Kaye, Ishmael Kone, right? Eustachio has his spot. That's fine. But in the midfield, there is a lot of competition now. So performances like these, especially when the team feels or looks kind of lethargic, then you have Jonathan Osorio who's, playing exceptionally well. These are games that stick out in a national team manager's head when he's picking, his starting 11, when he's looking at players for decisive or important games. These are performances that stick out. So he was exceptional, and it was at a really good moment because the rest of Canada seemed, especially in the second half, they just seemed complacent. Right, you're 2-0 up. You have another game in a few days against a very physical and a very the relationship between Canada and Honduras is not exactly warm and fuzzy. So that there's a very intense game coming up, and your mind is starting to drift towards that, and you get a bit complacent. But Jonathan Osorio was consistently performing, so he stood out even more amongst a Canada side that was kind of just going through the motions.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? A few minutes later, you said that Canada was a bit complacent, and that's exactly what happened because a few minutes later, Curacao, I think, had their only chance on goal. Very interesting chance with Juninho Bacuna dribbling past Alfonso Davies. Yes, I can repeat it if you want to. Dribbling past Alfonso Davies and crossing the ball, missed by Janga, but it fell to the feet of Kuka Martina, sorry, who shot it right on Milan Borjan. This action proved that Canada really needs to be careful in future games. Does that worry you, Elias? Is that something that you're like, if that happens against Honduras, we're gonna get punished?
Yes and no. Again, you never want to see your best player get dribbled like that, especially when he's renowned for being so difficult to get dribbled by because of his speed and his defensive skill, which is improving. But at the same time, when you look at the overall performance and just how unlike themselves so many Canadian players were playing, it's tough to kind of see this too cynically. Obviously, nothing about that game was anything to really write home about. There was not. It's not something that you're like, oh man, that Curacao game was great. Remember that Curacao game? No, this is going to be forgotten as quickly as it was played. So it's not too much to take from it, but at the same time, I don't love that this is the form they're bringing into Honduras. I
Yeah,
don't love that this is how this is, you know, the work, the body of work they're using to build into the next game, which
Interesting.
again, you know, they put themselves in a really good position with the goal differential that all they need is a draw. But at the same time, this Honduras team has already beat Canada and is now like frothing at the mouth because they have the chance to top the group in front of Canadian fans.
yep,
So they are absolutely reveling in it, and I know that, you know, Romel Kyoto is going to be loving the chance to score in Toronto, because why wouldn't he want to?
for
We'll
sure.
talk about that a bit later, obviously. Eve, how about that back line? Because we said that it was worrying. It was worrying that, you know,
Sure.
Curacao had that chance, but it was the only chance of the game in an experimental back line
Yeah,
with
like
Victoria, Cornelius,
yeah.
and Kennedy. So how did you
I
make of it?
okay, number one, like the shock would kill me to see, with all, say, if all available central defenders are available, I would literally die of shock to see that trio paired up again. Obviously, and especially poor Scott Kennedy, like he was wearing his giant mask,
Yeah,
that can't
Yeah.
be
he did
comfortable.
well. He did well.
No, he did, but he got hit in the face partway through. I was like, you
Yeah,
poor thing. Um, but I mean, it was obviously, I know you and I had our debate about, pairings and chemistry and so on and so forth. And it was clear in this case that there was a distinct lack of chemistry for sure. Certainly, I think Stephen Victoria having his presence there in the middle helped because, of course, he is kind of the stalwart presence in that lineup. That being said, I'm not losing too much sleep over it because it is an experimental lineup and it is players lower down the depth chart who were filling in. And at the end of the day, although we did have that scare in the other 89 minutes of the match, they did get the job done. So credit to them.
yeah, exactly. Credit to them, as you said. Now Herdman proceeded with some substitutions about right after that chance from Curacao, with Alfonso Davies coming out for Sam Adegugbe, Charles Andreas Brim coming in for Carol Laren at the 64th minute. A few minutes later, at the 71st, Atiba Hutchinson came in for Steven Eustachio. Mike Anthony Kay came for Ishmael Kone. And a bit later, at the 78th minute, Tajan Buchanan came in for Jonathan David. Right after that last change, that was the other chance that Canada got in the second half. Not a lot happened. Osorio crossed the ball. Osorio, him again.
Good.
Crossed the ball to Brim, who had a free red header on goal, but
Mhm.
he missed the target. This should have been in the back of the net, Eve, right?
I feel like I don't know if you've got something against Charles Andreas
Oh
Brim
man,
or what.
it was a free header. Like he had no one on him.
I feel like the angle though that he took the header from was a little bit awkward. You know what I mean? Like
Really?
he wasn't. I'd have to double check it again because by that point we were coming up on my bedtime. But I felt like, although you're correct, it was a free header. I felt almost like he was a little bit too far behind it in order for it to be like too far behind, say, as the arc was starting to fall, um, to really kind of get the momentum that you would have liked on it. And again, I mean, by this point, Canada was obviously comfortably in the driver's seat, so perhaps as well there was not so much pressure to score a goal.
Yeah, but that could have been, Brim making a stance and saying, you know what, you should consider me more in the future, right?
Well, I think John Herdman considers him plenty because he got called up like to the World Cup. So, and again, like, no slight to the player. I'm just saying there's obviously lots of other options ahead of him. I don't know. That's the thing. If Canada were in a losing position in the match, maybe I'd have a stronger feeling about it. But at the end of the day, they were kind of clear sailing ahead, so it was really hard to look upon it with, a whole ton of criticism, especially given that, as we discussed, kind of the whole team had just seemed a little off going into it.
Okay.
They'd seemed just a step behind what we would normally expect from them. So it was
Okay.
kind of just in keeping.
Just where's Eve? Where's Eve? This is
Oh.
not Eve talking. She's too nice. No. Now, that was the last action for Canada, Elias. Did you feel that that was a bit of a missed opportunity from Herdman, who could have given a cap to Luturiv, to Sator, even to Hebert, to give them their first cap? Uh, is it a missed opportunity for you, or no, not really, because it was an important game and it's only 2-0. It's not a very big score.
I wouldn't call it a missed opportunity. I think it would have been nice, especially given how, if it's your first cap, you're extremely motivated and you're gonna give it everything. So maybe that could have been
Exactly.
a little bit of a wake up call to everybody else in the field. But at the same time, I completely understand the impulse to honestly just see the game out and get out of there.
Yeah, it is a competitive match at the end of the day. It's not a friendly,
Exactly.
There
They
is
would've gone
something on the line.
They would have gone maybe in the last.
It is
10
a
minutes.
friendly that was transformed to an official game.
But they were
Okay, well, this is coming from somebody who's like all for the Leagues Cup or whatever they're calling it this summer. So
I am.
So forgive me if I don't take your opinion as seriously. Am I back?
Exactly. That's Eve. But when it comes to me, we see Eve right away. So it's okay. You were saying, Elias.
At the same time, it was going to be the last 10 minutes. If they were to go on, it would be the last 5-10 minutes. And, I don't think that it would have, I don't think it was almost like in John Herdman's head to kind of do something around that. If they were going to come on when a game was killed in the last few minutes, it would have been during an actual friendly, not a converted friendly, as you put it, right? So I think that he kind of just wanted to, or not him, but just the coaching staff in general probably just wasn't crazy about bringing in a first time cap untested. Exactly. Would have been cool, absolutely, like unquestionably, but at the same time it probably just wasn't a priority. I don't even think they would have considered it. Like, it probably just may not have been in their field of vision.
I mean, no disrespect to Dominic Zator, but at the end of the day, he is 28 years old. Is he really going to be like the future of central defense for Canada? Not 100% sure. I mean, no disrespect to him, just to be clear. I understand
he
that
was one of the best central defenders in
he absolutely was
since 2019. And we look at Joel Waterman and we're like, he needs to get to be in the squad, and we snub Dominic Zator. Now that he plays in Bosnia or whatever he plays, I don't know where he plays, but
he plays in Poland.
In Poland, sorry. Now he's like, he's being called up. Like, he should have been called up maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, but at this stage in the game, how far down the depth chart is he?
You congratulate. It's a kind of.
I completely do.
It's a kind of, thank you. Thank you for being part of it. Here's something that you can remember for the rest of your life, because not a lot of players are going to play and are going to wear their national team colors, right? And this is a great era for Canadian soccer. So when you have players that are performing, that went to Poland to get a cap, at least give him these 5 minutes. They're going to define his career, maybe. I'm sorry. Like, I don't think that a 10-man Curacao could have scored 2 goals in 3 minutes.
No.
So, like...
No, again, the shock would have killed me. But, like, again, while it is a quote-unquote glorified friendly, at the end of the day, it is a competitive match. And that's not necessarily, like, the moment to, I'm trying to find a way to say it that is not incredibly disrespectful. Yeah, to make gestures, exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay, but 1 sec. John Herdman said that whenever there's going to be friendlies, they're going to want to find some high-level opponents. Finally. So if it's a friendly and you're playing against Brazil, so it's better that you have Zator and to be scored on like a 7th goal, or... like, is it better to put him in the Nations League against Curacao? Or you know what? Never call him up. It's better to come with 18 players than not 23 and just to put him on the bench. What? Like he's being
I'm just
called
trying
up
to
and
think about what you said. At the end of the day, I think like,
oh man,
for
I can't wait
example,
for an answer. I can't wait for an
no,
answer. Yeah, go ahead.
at the end of the day, if you're simply putting a player in a game, not because that you think they're going to have a positive impact on the game, but because you want to like give them a pat on their back, then yeah, do it in a friendly, not a competitive match. Period.
Even if it's
Period.
against a very high level opponent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, no, I
Like I will die on this hill.
okay. Yeah, and it seems that Elias too, so that's good.
Thank you,
I'd like
Elias.
to be. I like to be the lone wolf. I don't mind. Now, Elias, next game, as you said it a bit earlier, will be against Honduras on Tuesday in Toronto this time. What should we expect from that game, knowing that Canada needs, as you said earlier, a draw or a win to go through to the Nations League finals? Prestigious Nations League finals.
I just think that first and foremost, they're going to be built on stability, right? There's not going to be too many experiments. There's not going to be too many people playing out of position. It's really just get the result. Because at the end of the day, when you play in major tournaments against teams at your level, at a higher level than you, or whatever level, the first job, the first priority, the only priority is to get the result.
Yeah.
Right. If you need a draw, you get a draw. If you need a win, you get a win, and you hold out for 90 minutes and you get the job done. Now again, you're playing in front of the home crowd. It's the
I
first
was
time
like
playing in
gonna
front
cut
of
you
the home
off.
crowd.
Thank God.
So they may want to put on a bit of a show, obviously, especially because they don't have the best relationship with Honduras, and there is that added bit of spice. They're going to want to maybe couple some of that stability with a bit of an offensive flair, with a bit of some showmanship, and I hope we do see some of that. But at the end of the day, when another good show of maturity and professionalism from this from this federation would be to just get the result, right? So yes, if you want to go out, you want to ball out, and you want to have a great show in front of your fans, because again, this is the first time since the World Cup that you're playing on home soil, then by all means go nuts. But remember that you have a job. So if you lose 5-4 and it's a great show, congratulations, but you're still losing,
like,
and you drop the second. So
oh my God,
remember what the first job is, and then have fun and put on a show.
And that's like the thing. I think Canada did pick up, say, a lot of, sorry, I'm probably going to come off as disrespectful again. They did pick up a lot of quote unquote bandwagon fans leading up to the World Cup, right? Like people who had never watched Canada soccer, Canadian men's national team, women's national team, CPL, whatever. They had never watched anything in their lives, turned on TSN or Sportsnet, and we're like, oh my God. And then of course they went to the World Cup, and like, let's face it, we were all very excited that we scored a goal, but you score one goal and you lose all three of your matches. Those bandwagoners who aren't necessarily super knowledgeable, who haven't been through all the trials and tribulations with this team. If you don't give these people a show in your return to competitive play, are they going to continue coming back? So I think they definitely will want to, like you said, kind of ball out, or at least the executives at Canada Soccer, as I will discuss later, will want them to ball out at this upcoming match. But definitely, I think we would want to see more intensity. We talked about the travel, the factors, the weird pitch, teeny tiny waterlogged pitch. I think we can expect that BMO Field, even though it is late March, should be in pretty decent shape. Obviously, TFC's been playing on it now already in MLS action. So it should be good to go. And I would expect them to play like a home team at home, asserting themselves and playing their style of soccer from the first whistle.
Yeah, I agree, and you know what? You talked a bit about what we should expect from Canada for that game against Honduras, but you talked a bit earlier about the fact that you need to adjust depending on the opponent. So, what needs to change, Eve, tactically before that game? Do you need some pacey forwards? Is there something that you would have liked, that you would like to see in that game against Honduras?
So
like
Canada has
tactically
played
or
Honduras and off. Yeah, yeah. I mean, my God, they are. I can't think of how many times Canada has played Honduras recently. It feels like 1,000 times between World Cup qualifying, Nations League, and everything else. Um, so just kind of reflecting, I think Canada will want an injection of pace going into this match because like Honduras, they're not a particularly spry and youthful squad. They have a lot of players who have been around the block for quite a while. So I think Canada could benefit from a guy like Tejon Gannon getting a start in this match because although his Club Brugge right now is really struggling, obviously, um, I think he is somebody who can always be so impactful on the match and who can always take somebody into a one-on-one and be really, really dangerous in that regard. So I would like to see him get a start. And I think, like I said, an injection of pace would do wonders.
yeah, I agree, but I just wonder who would be left on the bench, Elias. Like if you put Dejan Buchanan in that starting
Yeah.
11, who would you remove?
I feel like he does belong on that right flank, and he does have to use his pace in
Yeah, I feel
that
that.
wide area. So it really does depend on Canada's
I
decision. Do
mean,
they want to go with some stability and put Richie Larea in there, who has a bit more of a defensive side
could
to
they
him?
do
Do they
like a
want to
4-4-2 so that Richie Larea doesn't get left out because he did have an excellent match, and I feel like it is a
you end up going
shame to
with four
bench
And
center
him.
backs, right? You end up
where do
going
you
with
put
four center
Johnston?
backs. Johnson would play center back,
Well, are
right?
we
Yeah,
are we
but like
sure
in
if
a
he's
four-man
fit?
defense? Yeah,
Yeah,
he's fit. He's
he's
100%
No,
fit.
but are
he's
we
more
He
than
was
100?
suspended.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
was
right,
he's more than
suspended.
suspended. I forgot he
capable
was suspended. My bad.
of playing center
Completely
back,
forgot.
even in a two man defense, right? His athleticism and his reading of the game is more than good enough.
Yeah.
And again, he's at his best in a 3-man defense. But
Yeah.
if you're going to
I
restructure it,
think
he's
I think
definitely
we'd
good
be
enough to
okay
play in
leaving
a 2-man
Steven
defense.
Vittoria out there. And I really like again. I am like weirdly team Derek Cornelius. I'm not sure why. It's just a feeling I have. I think he would be all right on the left in a 2 to 4 man defense.
But Derek Cornelius is the 2020 Rudy Camacho. He's a great defender, but he sometimes like forgets that he has a brain. So
I
so
don't know. I really like him.
that's the way he was with the Whitecaps, and that's what
He
He's
had
always been
what? Yo, he's not
he's
played
always
with
been
the
that player.
Whitecaps since 2020. I don't think. So he
Okay,
has
but
grown since then. He's 25 now. He's a more mature player.
okay,
It'll be interesting to see, but I do think that if they want to control the game, they do it at their best as a 3-back. Um, and that means that you'll have that back three of Cornelius, Vittoria, and Johnston. Where again, I think we all agree Johnston is at his best when he plays central defenses with 3.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
on that right flank, again, you'll have Davies on the left. Even though Adekubi had a really good performance off the bench, right? We didn't really talk too much about how Adekubi did off the bench, but I think
Yeah, that was
I
good.
think he did
Yeah.
really well, and he was, again, a breath of
He's a
fresh
good
air.
player, right? He's a
But
good
again,
player.
I like
I don't think
him.
it's enough to
I
usurp.
like him too.
I don't think it's enough to usurp Alfonso Davies, obviously. But on that
Unless
right
they change
side,
formation, in which
unless they
case you
change
can.
formation, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they do stick with similar formation to how they played against Curacao, which I wouldn't be surprised if they did, the big debate really does lie on the right hand side. Where do you put an attacking minded player like Dejan Buchanan to kind of complement the left side, which is Alfonso Davies, who's obviously an offensive minded player, or do you put someone like Richie Larea, whose trade position is right back and not right wing, to kind of bring that defensive stability? And this is kind of where we've talked about before, where you balance the showmanship and the attractive soccer with the stability of getting a result. So it'll be an interesting kind of puzzle for Canada to kind of figure out. But I really do hope to see more of Tejan Buchanan. And like you said, right, Honduras is not exactly the quickest team in the world, which means Tejan Buchanan
They're
could
not
have a
youthful.
field day, not in the slightest, right? And Tejan Buchanan could have
Mhm.
an absolute field day on that right side, especially if he gets into space. And Kyle Larin is in Spain now, but there is a certain element of familiarity with one another. And if they could link up, especially with how good Kyle Larin's form is right now, I don't think
Yeah.
that can be overlooked. The only difference now is, does Tajon Buchanan start or does he come off the bench if they need a goal? If they find themselves down or if they find themselves in a tie game and they need an extra
I mean,
shot in the arm.
I think he could still come off the bench even if Canada's in a winning position because he's going to cause problems for the defenders. So I think even if Canada's in a winning position and we start to see kind of Honduras throwing the kitchen sink at it, I think Tajon Buchanan would be an excellent resource to just really make maybe a few more players stay back a little further than they were because he's so dangerous. He can break so quickly. He actually, despite like his kind of lithe figure, he can actually like physically stand up really well to opposition players. And I think he has a great first time touch and excellent vision as well to find his opposition, his partners, whether in the midfield or strikers in the box.
Interesting. I have a feeling that if John Herdman finds a way to have Tajon Buchanan, Alphonso Davies, Kyle Arian, and Jonathan David on the pitch and still create some sort of find some sort of balance between offense and defense with all those four players on the pitch, I think that will be the winning combination. Because I think that
that sounds so good.
Having those four is so high level that I think we could beat any team in CONCACAF with those four on the pitch if we are able to find some sort of balance. And
behind them,
unfortunately, that's where I think that's very tricky because it's four very offensive players.
Yeah, you have to restructure the midfield a bit. I don't think Osorio would play. No, I don't think Osorio would play. You'd have to bring in someone like Kay that's a bit more of a ball winner.
He's not been my favorite.
You would need Eustachio and Piet, in my opinion.
Well, sadly,
but Piet is injured, of course. But I think that's the only way this could work. You need a real defensive mid.
That's the thing. And you're going to be having like a less than normal defense behind you, no matter whether it's two center backs or three center backs, because of the players who are injured and couldn't be called into camp. So at the same time, I think, although, like you said, it would be so amazing to see them all on the pitch together. In these circumstances, I agree. It's not realistic.
Unless you put Tajon and Alphonso Davies as wing backs.
And then, and as we said, like, that feels so shitty for guys like Richie Laryea who balled out.
Yeah. We'll see. Tough choices for John Herdman ahead of that
choices.
Game. But good choices, exactly. I prefer to have too many good choices than not enough. So that's it, I think, for the Canadian national team, unless you guys have anything to add on that game.
Nope. Perfect. Looking forward to it.
And now we're on the dot on the Canadian national team. Love it. Let's move on to CF Montreal. CF Montreal, of course, didn't play a game this weekend, but a lot have happened since last week, since our last episode, since that great win against Philadelphia. So first of all, CF Montreal signed defender Gabriele Corbo that was transferred from Italian club Bologna FC. Corbo signed a 2-season contract for the 2023 and the 2024 season with an option year in 2025. Good or bad news, guys? Let's start with you, Eve.
I really liked Gabriele Corbo when he played for Montreal last year. He obviously was not a starter, but in the matches that he did play, I thought he was like more than serviceable. I thought he had just a good calmness, like a good poise in those situations. I am trying to remember, was it Miami? Did he start against Miami in like the last game of the season? Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't remember.
Thank you.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I like Elias' reflex, so I'm gonna roll with that.
Really.
Yeah, no, I knew it was a Florida team, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but yes, okay, Elias, I like your yes, so we're rolling with that. I thought he was not out of place at all. And last year we talked so much about how the chemistry between the three defenders was so important, and he slotted in like there was no problem. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he is good ball to feet as well. I think aerially he brings even something a little bit more to his game. So on it, I'm so pumped. I think he's a great signing. I just hope he gets
Elias?
the minutes he probably wants. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Anano Sada was a bit coy about his usage. You're right. He said that everybody is useful, but not everybody might be used. So I think this might have been more of a looking ahead, especially if you lend any credence to the rumors that Kamal Miller and Joel Waterman, especially the keep of their performances, may be on their way out, maybe looking at transfers overseas. Someone like Gabriela Corbo, who's familiar with the system, who's familiar with the team, and who gets along really well with Rudy Camacho, can kind of immerse himself seamlessly. So this may be a looking forward transfer and not an immediate. With the amount, with the rate at which CF Montreal players are getting injured, maybe it is a looking now concern. But as far as I can tell, this is more of a looking forward. And I think it's a good decision, right? Like you've said it. He fits in well with the system. He's a very
Yeah.
good progressive passer. He's great at breaking lines, which is something you need in that system. Be it Wilfried Nasi or Nano Sada, they need progressive passers in that back three, and Gabriel Corbo is one of them. So I think that it's again, it's just like we said, right? It's another case of too many good things, right? So it's just another decision on if and when he's going to play, but it's on
Well,
a good note, right? It's not
with
a
the
yeah,
yeah. No, I was gonna say with this year's injury record so far,
exactly. He may find
it's gonna
himself
be
just a
sooner
perennial
rather than
starter.
later, sadly.
You never know.
Yeah, and when you guys think of it, what's really nice is that we know that Gabriel Corbo usually plays as a right center back, and that's where he played under Wilfried Nasi. What's nice is that Joe Waterman can play as a left center back or right
Exactly.
center back, or even in the middle too. So adding Gabriel Corbo to the mix is really not a bad idea, knowing that you have a versatile Joe Waterman. You have also, from what I heard, George Campbell, even if you haven't seen him, he's
Yeah.
someone that also can be versatile and play
Yeah.
all three positions. And you have,
He
Robert
also step into
Torkelson
the
that
midfield, so remember that.
exactly
Midfield.
Campbell can step in the midfield exactly, and Torkelson can play as a left center back, Corbo as a right center back. So I think that the mix of central defenders that we have is quite good. So I think it's going to add depth. And a lot of people are saying, why now? Why are we adding Corbo right now? Is it a panic buy or anything? I don't think so. I think it's an opportunity for Olivier Renard. I
And
really feel that it's an opportunity that before Gabriel Corbo didn't want to agree to terms with CF Montreal because he wanted the starting position and everything. And then he realized that, out there, competition is fierce and he's not going to get what he wanted. So maybe then, his agent, knocked on the door of Renard saying, you know what, we'll accept it. It's my speculation. That's what I think happened. And hopefully it is the case. And it seems that we're going to have a pretty good Gabriel Corbo to that's going to come to CF Montreal and
yeah.
give us some good performances.
Yeah. And as well, this is the last year of Rudy Camacho's contract, right?
Yeah. And I don't think it'll
So
be renewed.
that
I'll
was
be
exactly where I was going with that. Took the
yeah,
words out of my mouth.
yeah. I'll be very surprised if
I
it's
think it
renewed.
all depends on just if any center backs leave, how many, right? Because again, right, Kamal Miller, who's been linked with moves away, Joel Waterman's been linked with moves away. I don't think they would love to see all three of their starting center backs move away.
That's bold.
Even if there are other quality center backs in the
Yeah.
team, I don't think they have a competitive MLS defense if all three of them leave. They'll have to splash a lot of money to bring in some reinforcements there, and I know that they don't like that, but if they want to remain competitive, they will have to if all three center backs leave. But again, someone like Gabriel Corbo, who was being kind of groomed as the next in line should these center backs leave is a good addition. But
And he
again,
knew, yeah. No, sorry, go
it's
ahead.
still a little bit thin if they end up with all. Again, this is a bit of a reach in terms of hypothetical that Waterman, Miller, and Camacho are all gone this year, but it's given how quickly Johnston and Kone left, and then Mihailovic, because of the quality of the seasons they had, it's not
You never
as
know.
far fetched as you would think 2 years ago, for example.
Exactly, and maybe Corbo was brought on because they're anticipating Miller to leave.
Could be.
So that's also something that we can look into. But you know what? I doubt it very much that all three of them will leave this year. Maybe there's going to be one this year and two next year, or something close to that. But talking about those three center backs, Joel Waterman signed a new contract also for 2023 and 2024 with an option for 2025. I'm just going to give you a few stats. He set several personal records last season, including minutes played. Starts with 30. He played, on the 30 games he played, he had 30 starts. He completed, about 2,000 passes in a season in his season, 36 interceptions, and he had 3 goals and 4 assists as a center back, which is really really good. Um, what do you think about that deal? I don't know about you guys, but I'm ecstatic. I'm very,
I
very
love
happy.
I
I
love
love
Joel
this guy.
Waterman.
Yeah.
Because
And
I think he brings a lot off the pitch as well. I just think he's a good character to have around the team, especially such a young team as Montreal has right now. Sorry, Hadi, I just completely stole your speaking.
it's okay. It's okay, go ahead.
No, yeah, no. For me, he's somebody who, as long as he theoretically wanted, assuming he keeps up the level of play that we've kind of become accustomed to as he's grown from since he started back in 2020. I think as long as he keeps that style of or that level of play up, I think he could become for a long term, really really long term player, longer term even than the 2025 option year. And no, so I'm so pumped to see him sign. And I thought it was, obviously we know that they're not exact numbers, but when we saw the salary numbers that had been released, I thought it was criminal.
Yeah, it's a bargain.
Truly. So I really hope that obviously this new deal, I'm really glad that it takes effect in
Yeah.
2023, means he's getting justly paid.
Yes.
And
I'm pretty
so
sure of that because in a communique that was distributed to the public,
yep.
it's kind of indirectly Olivier Renard said, we hope that this new contract will help him grow. So in a certain way, I felt that indirectly he was saying that he got an increase
More money.
on his salary.
Yeah.
I don't think he would accept such a low salary. He's a
Well,
Canadian international.
exactly. I was going to say he's now made a call up. He didn't take the pitch, but he was at the World Cup with Canada, and that obviously augments your market value right away. So no, I'm so glad to see him. I was dying to see this deal. I was really hoping to see it in the off season, and I'm glad we see it now.
What do you think, Elias? That extension, that contract extension, what does it mean for Joel Waterman?
I think it's a show of faith. I think it's a show of faith from the team onto him, in the fact that they really do believe that he could be the future of this back line should he stay. I also do think it's a good kind of cover your ass move from Montreal, because if he does end up moving overseas, it likely won't be on a free transfer because he'll be under contract. So I think it's honestly a win-win, right, for both sides. He gets a well-deserved pay raise. Again, most likely a well-deserved pay raise, and some added security.
Yeah.
He'll get he's obviously going to be a perennial starter, and CF Montreal, locks down one of the best progressive passers in MLS.
Literally.
In terms of outfielders, again, him, Camacho, and Wanyama all were in the top 20 progressive passers, outfielders.
Yeah.
But Waterman was the big surprise, right? Camacho plays in the middle. Wanyama's one of the best holding midfielders in MLS, but Waterman was a name that stuck out. So, he's there's a reason that he was so heavily linked to moves, especially to Turkey, and this is a good kind of safety net for Montreal. If this happens in the next 2 years or in the option year, they have him under contract and they can cash into a decent transfer fee.
Yeah, but you know what? I doubt it very much that Joel Waterman will go to Europe now.
Really?
The reason behind it is that I'm pretty sure, pretty sure that he got that race, and I'm pretty sure he got that contract saying, you know what, we want you on the long term, unless you have a crazy offer that comes in.
Yeah.
And he's what, 27 now. He got a contract until he's 29, maybe 30. I don't think that Europe is going to be the route for him, but you never know. You never know. But I feel that the discussion that the front office of CF Montreal had with him was like, you know what, we want you to stay for the long term, and I feel he's happy here. Again, unless there's a big offer, I don't think he's going to go to Poland or to Slovenia or to whatever. All my respect, of course, for the Slovenian league and the Polish league, but if he's going to Europe, it's going to be in the top 7, top 8 European leagues. He's not going to go for a second tier league. I doubt it very much. I'll be very surprised if it's the case.
Yeah, because it also feels like a lateral move, right?
Exactly.
If you want to, people kind of forget that MLS still has quality to it, and it's not like a non-league teams. Right, with respect, it's if anything, if you look at it, for example, the most common one is the English football in pyramid. Their championship or their league, at worst, they're League One level teams, right? So this is a move to any league outside of the top 7, right? Like you said, it feels like a lateral move, and I don't see the need, right? He's capped, and again, if he's fit, I feel like he would get capped in this window as well. So it wouldn't be a move to kind of maybe get on the national team's radar. He was called up to the World Cup, and if he's happy in Montreal, it's good. But this contract kind of does feel like, regardless of what happens, everybody is kind of secure. This is more just a neatly doing business, and I think it's something that Montreal really needed given the offseason.
Yeah.
This and Corbo, which is kind of two very cut and dry, clean deals. Everybody is happy and no drama whatsoever, no extended negotiations, no nothing like that. It's just, two deals that were done and announced before anyone even got like a whisper of negotiations.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that, you're going to have the Watermans, the Piets, those players are going to be here for a few seasons and are going to stay with the club. But we'll see. Hopefully, for Joel Waterman, he'll get exactly what he wants. If it's staying in Montreal, good for him. If he wants to move abroad, good for him too. I hope he gets what he wants because, as Eve said a bit earlier, he's an amazing guy. We've had him here on the Ball is Round, and we really like him. So hopefully we'll see a happy Joel Waterman in the next days, next season, and until he retires. So that's it, I think, for the CF Montreal news. There wasn't anything else that we have to share or we have to talk about.
Nope.
So let's move on to the last item that we have on this episode. It's Canada Soccer that appeared in front of the Heritage Committee. And Eve, you have all that for us.
Yes. So if you recall, when I talked about the women's national team players' testimony, I mentioned that the questions that had kind of been asked to them were, quote unquote, a bit fluffy. It's not the case this time. So committee, So the committee had 3 witnesses testifying in front of them. They had Earl Cochran, who we are all familiar with, Paul-Claude Berube, and Stephanie Giositz, who are both board members for Canada Soccer. And this time around, the committee, they weren't asking about the players, how they feel, what they experienced, so on and so forth. It was completely different. They came at those executives looking for dates, looking for numbers, and looking for evidence. And in fact, the drama kind of kicked. It's not drama. I shouldn't say that. Before opening statements even happened, the Heritage Committee said, we were looking to hear from Nick Bontis because obviously he was not present. As it turned out, he had indicated that he was not going to be available. For reasons that kind of required, I believe they mentioned reasons that required empathy. So it was something, personal, I would assume. So even before the hearing actually started, the committee passed the motion to summon Nick Montes, Victor Montagliani, who was, of course, formerly president of Canada Soccer, as well as the current CFO of Canada Soccer, Sean Heffernan, by name. And they have been summoned to testify before the committee by the end of the month. So we may have another segment next week, folks.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, as the lone representative of, say, the staff of Canada Soccer, Earl Cochrane did bear the brunt of the committee's questioning. Of course, he was obviously the most executive person present there. One of the first points asked of him was that, what was the rationale behind the budget cuts to the men's and women's program, given the men have just come through a World Cup cycle and the women are participating in the World Cup this year. And he immediately said, that Canada Soccer did not recognize the impact that the budget cuts were going to have. And they are talking with the women's team to confirm what they need. And are committed to meeting their needs. So
at last,
yes,
it took
exactly.
that much for them to say sorry, we made a mistake. It's been a year now.
Basically, yeah. Obviously, the budget cuts were kind of new this year, I believe, to my understanding anyway. But they are obviously keen to walk them back, and obviously those budget cuts have been taken really poorly in the public eye. So not super surprising. Earl Cochrane as well, he did just kind of reiterate that Canada Soccer is committed to equalizing not only the pay structure, but also just the training environments and preparation and so on and so forth afforded to both the men's and women's national teams. One thing that came up, I shouldn't say one thing because it was definitely the heart of the top of the discussion, was the Canada Soccer business deal. That came up time and time again. So I know we definitely have talked about it a few times here on the pod, but basically the executives were asked a lot of questions. And one thing that they were asked was regarding the rationale as to why they took this deal when it kind of locks them in for such a long term and potentially an extra 10 years until 2037 at Canada Soccer Business's discretion. So the rationale provided by Canada Soccer's representation was that at the time this deal came about, they were paying up to $1 million per year to have national team matches broadcast because no broadcaster wished to pay for them. So they were having to pay the broadcasters to air their matches. And they cited the revenue numbers that they generated, $1.4 million in sponsorships in 2018. Wait for it, which increased to 8.2 million in 2022. And due to the compensation structure with Canada Soccer Business, they received approximately $4 million from Canada Soccer Business in 2022.
They took 50%. CSB took 50%.
That's correct. No. I shouldn't say they took 50%. Because basically it was a fixed amount that they were going to be paid. So to hear them explain it, even if they had only generated, even if they had only generated $2 million in sponsorships, they would have gotten $4 million from Canada Soccer Business. But like you said, even if they had gotten $30 million in sponsorships, they would have gotten $4 million from Canada Soccer Business.
But the 30 millions in sponsorships, they don't go directly into Canada Soccer's pockets. There's a part of it that goes to CSB. Or all of it goes to CSB.
To hear the explanations as they were given, sounds like all of it, and then they get a fixed amount back.
They get $4 million. So if CSB raises $40 million, they get $4 million from Canada.
They get a fixed amount every year.
Man, okay, sorry.
Obviously, at the time the deal was struck, because their revenue was so low, it came off as a good deal. They were paying to broadcast their matches, and they didn't have a ton of sponsorship revenue. That being said, obviously things have taken a dramatic turn. So, what do you guys think of this logic behind the Canada Soccer and Canada Soccer business deal?
It just shows an incredible amount of short-sightedness. That's the main
Yeah.
takeaway, right? From everything I've heard and everything I've read, and again, you talking about this now, it just shows an incredible, first of all, short-sightedness, but just a lack of faith in your own federation.
Very much
That you
so, and that
think
kind of
that
resonate.
like this is this sounded like a desperation deal when you're on the cusp of qualifying for your first men's World Cup in 30 years, and you are right in the middle of.
It was in 2018, right? So we
Yeah.
weren't on the cusp to qualify yet,
But
right? It was the beginning of the
see
tenure
this
of John
team,
Hurt.
and you see how well this team has done in Gold Cups
Yeah.
immediately afterwards, right? There has to
Well,
be a certain lack of
I
lack of
agree. I
vision,
agree. I just want to
right?
put
And you're
I
also
just
in the middle of this incredible run that the women's team is going on. Surely that this is an upward trajectory for Canadian soccer, and then you kind of sign your life away. What feels like a
Mhm.
desperation deal, when in
25
reality,
years, man.
And it actually, that harkens back what you said, kind of, Elias, to what Janine Becky said, was that basically they were betting, like when this deal was struck, it seems as though Canada Soccer was betting on its national teams to fail. It was not betting on them to succeed. So it
It's
does,
crazy.
right?
It's crazy. But I heard also that they said that they're negotiating a modernized deal with TSB.
Yes, that's
What does
correct.
that mean?
So
What does modernized mean?
so I know, right? Because it was only 5 years ago. So Earl Cochrane said, particularly the length of the deal, like that fixed term of going to 2027, and then CSB having the exclusive right to extend it to 2037 if they want to, as well as just the amount of revenue sharing between the two of them. So that is being negotiated as well. One thing that we learned was actually in 2020, CSB had breached the terms of the contract that they've struck together, which was interesting.
They
Apparently,
created a
the
precedent then.
apparently,
They created a precedent, yeah.
apparently they're like Canada Soccer and Canada Soccer Business are negotiating that in the terms of the contract, whatever that means, because it is still such a mysterious deal. And a lot of the MPs in the committee were kind of disappointed because it seems as though some of the paperwork was missing that they had requested be provided regarding the deal, and like the minutes of meetings when the deal was approved, for example, were one thing that was missing, and one of the MPs was not pleased about that.
Of course, he's not pleased.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of fishy things in that deal.
So many fishy things, yeah. But do you guys have any hopes that they're going to be able to modernize this deal or modify it, however you want to see it?
CSB might bow to some public pressure and make some kind of concession, but I mean the deal has been signed, right? CSB is for all intents and purposes in the driver's seat. There's only so much they have to cede to, right?
That's the
Because
thing,
at the
like
end of
they're
the
reaping the
day,
benefit.
exactly, and the men's and women's team will continue to have success. But in terms of modernizing the contract, again, they could make some concessions. They could meet Canada Soccer halfway on some terms, but they have no obligation to. Right?
Yeah.
This deal is signed. This would purely be out of the goodness of their heart or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there's no Canada Soccer has no leverage.
No.
They signed their soul away, and now they're kind of like asking for part of it back.
Yeah.
As in, so
yeah,
I
like you said, public pressure maybe.
Yeah,
but
that'll do a fraction of the work needed to kind of repair any kind of situation, right? This might be like
right.
half a step in the right direction, which is better than no steps, but you have to ask
never
yourself,
have gotten to where we are.
Exactly, you should never have gotten this bad in the first place.
Exactly.
It's very tough not to kind of continuously just spiral and become more cynical,
right.
and just right. So
yeah,
when you say hope, it's just like, what hope?
Yeah,
there is
exactly.
none.
There's none. I agree.
No,
look,
and
if CSB makes any kind of improvement to the terms of the deal, I'll believe it when I see it. Honestly.
Yep. No,
Right?
exactly.
I don't
And
want to hear
hope.
any reports or any kind of commitment or whatever kind of weird corporate legalese they use to
Mm-hmm,
PR the way out of this. I'll believe it when I see it, and when the players and
mm-hmm.
the coaching staff and the people involved with the teams say, okay, this is an improvement. Not when Canada Soccer says it's an improvement. I want to see the players and those who it actually affects recognize the improvement, because until
Yeah.
then it's all words on paper,
Yeah.
and it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Just some other points that I thought were definitely very interesting. One of the MPs mentioned that the committee had received a whistleblower report, and the whistleblower report hadn't been made available because apparently it was still in the midst of being translated. And the whistleblower report was titled Unequal and Unsafe, the Women's Game Under Canada Soccer, which is deeply concerning. Um, According to the MP, and like I said, like nobody's been able to see this because it's just not been made public at this time. Apparently, a lot of it did surround the sexual abuse scandal and the handling of it involving Barb Berarda. We learned at that time that Canada Soccer was not investigating any other incidents or allegations, and they don't know if there's any investigations going on at the provincial level. I think that is very much something worth keeping an eye on because of their past of shoddy handling and their recent commitment to upholding the McLaren report. So I think it very much worth keeping an eye on. As well, in terms of women's soccer, the Canada Soccer and Canada Soccer Business were criticized, for striking a deal with a business that was investing heavily in CPL, or basically owning CPL. However, they were not investing whatsoever in a women's league. So Earl Cochrane did say at least that Canada Soccer has been meeting with Project 8 weekly to make sure that their league is going to meet the eligibility requirements to exist officially as part of Canada Soccer. I'm not really sure if that's good enough.
No.
That's the least they can do.
Right?
That's
Like
not.
Diana
It's
Matheson,
not
like
even the
just
minimum.
exactly. 100%. And yeah, I was kind of like, can you, maybe, I don't know if they're helping them out more. I'm sure they would have said if they were, because
Yeah.
they did not look, it was not a good look for them at this meeting. But I would hope certainly that they're doing more than just having a weekly like check-in with them or what have you. So kind of due to a lot of missing paperwork and just the fact that obviously the committee, they wanted to hear from Nick Bontis, who was such a central figure. And a lot of the times Earl Cochrane, who had not been part of the CSB deal negotiations, did say like he couldn't answer some of the questions. A couple of times the board members were able to answer the questions, but that being said, it was obvious that the committee like wasn't as interested in hearing from them as they were from the man who was in the driver's seat at the time. So I think it will be really fascinating to see if we do actually get to hear from Nick Bontis, because I can, like, given the change in tone and questioning between the players and Cochrane and the board members, I can only imagine the questions they're going to have for him. Really fascinating stuff.
It's gonna be funny
Yeah.
stuff. Funny stuff.
I don't.
Oh, it's gonna be
I
funny.
gotta tell you, I was listening to that and I was
Laughing,
uncomfortable.
kind of funny.
Of course,
Yes.
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever.
No, it was
You know
pretty
what?
shocking.
It continues to shock me every time we talk about these.
Yeah.
I'm still shocked. I cannot believe that we're seeing that in Canada. For me, it's unacceptable, and I
Yep.
talked about it quite a few times. And
Yep.
this needs to be fixed. Pressure needs to continuously be applied on Canada Soccer for things to be fixed. So here on TBIR, we'll continue on talking about it on and on and on and on. If we can do just 1% of, we can create 1% of pressure, we will do so, because
Yep.
unacceptable.
No, exactly. It's been so poorly managed and it's obviously coming to light now, and it is a really bad look.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll hear about it, I think, next week also, because as you said a bit earlier, some very important players or some very important figures have to still appear in front of the Heritage Committee. So
Yep.
hopefully we'll hear about it from you, Eve, next week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it for this part of the program. Last but not least, social media. So it's your turn, Elias.
Yes,
Let's go with the segment.
Yeah, so there's not much CF Montreal action, but there's still some good stuff. This is from Sean Richardson. One soccer isn't perfect, but going back to watch completed games is a hell of a lot easier than with MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. There's no spoilers at all. Apple should go check it out.
Yeah, I have not figured that out, man.
It's still a pain, but just how close is Apple TV to kind of making this a fully functional streaming service, right? What do you think? What's the biggest priority for Apple TV right now to make MLS Season Pass the best it could be, at least for the first, half season?
Listen, for me, I'm not an Apple fan. Okay, I don't have anything Apple. I'm not at all an Apple guy. But you know what? The idea behind Apple and the way they market themselves is that they're their best. Okay, and if you're aiming to be the best, you have to be the best at everything. One, and you have to be able to offer the best service possible. So when you think that's a streaming service like One Soccer, don't get me wrong, it's a great streaming for service. It has its faults, but they have quite a very good features. That it's even comparable to Apple. For me, this is really not a good look for Apple because Apple should be the best. It's not normal that we're not able to see the games in French. When we want to. It's not normal that we cannot see the replays when we want to. It's not normal that we cannot see the replays in French whenever we want to.
The replays in Spanish are there though. I rewatched Portland, LA. The replays in Spanish are there. So
exactly.
I don't know, man.
It's not normal that the sound quality is that awful. It's not normal that there's so many things that are not acceptable when you talk about one of the companies that wants to be the leader in everything they do. Because right now, they're not the leader. They're really, really behind a lot of streaming services, if not all streaming services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an adjustment. I'm just gonna say that. I'm really hoping that they learn lessons from these early games and that it improves over the course of the season. I mean, already I think at least like the tone as far as like the coloring of the pitch and stuff goes is better. And that's my ability to give them a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, they're a company with virtually unlimited funds, right? They're throwing $250 million a year at this league.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Hopefully, again, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's been 5 weeks, right, since they've been doing this. But after a certain point, if you don't see any tangible improvements, what are they working on?
Exactly. Right? Yeah. TBD, I guess.
Yeah.
I also want to say, because we talked about the bad things of Apple, but there are some good things. We have very good commentators for CF Montreal games, like in French and in English. I love it. I love seeing Nigel Reo-Coker, being there, and talking about CF Montreal and other, of course. Of course, maybe I would like to see, maybe more knowledgeable CF Montreal analysts analyze the games and commentate the game,
especially in English.
In English or in French, it's the same thing in French because,
the most recent match I thought was good for English, but that's kind of unsurprising because Greg Sutton was the English commentator.
Exactly, amazing guy, Greg. Saying
yes.
When Montreal get on the road, though, they pick up on the American feed, which means that
it's hopeless.
They pronounce it Chouanier, and the pronunciation is a bit off.
Chouanier.
Or they pronounce it offer. right? It's 04.
Oh,
It's really
I
not that
just watched
right.
them on mute if I don't like the commentary.
So yeah,
No, but
that's kind of the thing where there is an English, right? Because it's still gone to the point where TSN 690 you can hear the radio broadcast while watching. You should be able to hear it, but I can't.
I can't figure it out.
I can't access the radio broadcast. I could change
Well,
it to
me
every
neither.
language.
I was gonna say
but
you
I
can play it
can't
on your
find-
phone.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that.
That's what some of us do out of
The whole
desperation.
point-
Okay.
You have your TV.
Exactly. You
No, I
have the
know.
setup and everything.
I
And
know. I'm not saying it's right.
I can hear an English Montreal-based broadcast. Well, it's available, but I can't hear it.
Ah.
Yeah, no, it
So,
sucks.
What's the point of it?
So all of these things need to be fixed if you
Yeah.
want to be at the level that Apple thinks it is.
Yep, exactly. Especially if they plan to add more sports to their arsenal.
I'm so happy to be
true.
able to bash Apple on air. Sorry,
Okay.
I
Right
said
on.
that.
We move
Go
on
ahead.
to our next tweet.
On to the next tweet, yes. This one is from Coach Ben Brannigan. Teams with international players got punished for spending money on good players yesterday. Absolutely stupid to play during international breaks. Makes the league look amateur. I'm
Is this
inclined
referring to
to
MLS?
agree. This is referring to MLS having games during the international break when, again, their best players are not there. Not only is this a weird marketing decision, but I feel like this is
know
also
what
a
you
poor
mean.
sporting decision. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Because
I don't like it.
It depends. It depends. In Brazil, they always do that. In Argentina, they always do that too. You know, there are leagues that do that. It's not unusual. Now, of course, if you compare it to European leagues, yes, it is unusual. But these things happen too. When you have too many games, don't forget that in North America, the problem that we have is the weather. So at one point, because of the World Cup, because of the Leagues Cup, because of everything,
And the Gold Cup this year too.
and the Gold Cup this year, at one point you run out of space to put all your calendar days, right? So a calendar's.
But yeah, you have to worry for the welfare of the players as well, right? Especially with the sheer volume of travel that is demanded in MLS. Like that's a lot more travel than even like Brazil is not a small country,
Yeah.
but it's still huge amounts of travel for matches back and forth. Bigger, I think, than any league that's actively operating right now.
Absolutely. And you see all these European players complain about fixture congestion, with all the competition they have with their clubs, and then they were the first confederation to introduce the Nations League, and they said it's just more games, and then CONCACAF and MLS saw that and said, let's copy them.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Right, so it's because you have your domestic cup, you have your domestic league, you have your continental league, and now you have your continental friendly league cup thing, right? On top of that,
we don't have a word for it.
Domestic. You have your
Continental Cup is the Gold Cup, so
no.
The
Continental League
Championship, and then you have your Continental International Championship, and also your Nations League. On top of that, you have international tournaments, right? And you have Canada and the US and Mexico, who will most likely be partaking in the Copa America. So at what point, knock on wood, yes. But at what point do you as a league say, maybe we're overworking them?
Right? Just I feel so bad.
Yeah. I think that maybe what MLS should do is, the Leagues Cup is maybe just do it whenever there's no Gold Cup and there's no World Cup. So maybe do the Leagues Cup once every 3 years or once every 4 years. And that creates some sort of
No, I'm trying to do math, between when the Gold Cup happens versus the World Cup to figure out the right year.
The Gold Cup is every 2 years.
Yeah, no, I know. And the World Cup is every 4 years, and it's on the odd year versus the World Cup being on the even year.
Exactly. So you have 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. That in between
you don't have
year.
anything. Exactly. That's going to be the year of the Euros.
Yeah.
So it's
not a lot of MLS players go to.
Exactly.
Or
so
even not a lot of Liga MX players go either.
That maybe would be the solution, is to put the Leagues Cup every 4 years on that year where there's no big international competition. But I agree with you, Elias. It's a bit too much. I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Right on. Next tweet.
Next tweet comes from Graham Falk. Jade Riviere on the bench for MU women for the first time, as expected. Lisa Naslund and Maria Thorisdottir miss out, but Jade Riviere was an unused substitute in Manchester United's 4-0 win yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
With the World Cup, 3 months away, how important is it just for her to be?
I'm ready.
Sorry?
Go ahead. No.
How
I'm ready.
important-
I'm like, Hady, I want to go first.
how
Finish your question.
Eve, how important is it for Riviere to just be within the squad?
Yeah. So excellent to see that she's back from injury. Obviously, her injury really derailed the end of her NCAA career, sadly. But beyond thrilled that she was able to sign in Europe professionally. I have deep concerns about her getting playing time because we've seen how Adriana Leon has just
Vanished.
spectated. She's just on the bench, on the bench, on the bench. Yes, she was for an umpteenth match. And so that concerns me really deeply. I was like, I'm happy for Jade Riviere that she was able to sign professionally coming off an injury and able to sign for a club of such reputation. But seeing how poor Adriana Leon has just, like I said, just completely gone from, a de facto starter with West Ham to can't even make like cup matches versus league matches. I worry. I do.
They should pull a Kyle Laren and go play for Valladolid. And
No, I think that Jade Riviere has, I love Adriana Leon, but Adriana Leon is, I think, 27 now, if not 28.
That's the prime of your career.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. So you're not gonna have better from Adriana Leon that what she's already shown, but Jade Riviere is very, very young. So by playing her, you're gonna help her reach her potential, and her potential is very, very high. So I think that the way Manchester United, and hopefully the way Manchester United is going to look at this is that I need to give her some minutes because she could be a world-class player very, very soon, and she could be my starter in the next.
I don't trust him.
In the next 3-4 years. I don't know who's the manager of Manchester United, but I don't know if you want...
Mark Skinner. His last name is Skinner.
Oh, it's the guy from Portland, from the Timbers before. Is it him?
Mark Skinner.
Not the Timbers, the Thorns. I think so.
Could be. He was with the Orlando Pride before, for sure.
Oh, Pride. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember he was at the NWSL. So yeah,
he was.
So
so
yeah, so it's interesting. So it's interesting,
Yeah.
Maybe this is gonna be the way for Jade Riviere, and hopefully it will. But I'm not really at all worried about Jade Riviere being match fit, being called up to the national team for the World Cup. I'm not at all.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Leon, though, my geez, give her a minute. Sorry.
Just 1 minute.
I'm just so mad. It really
so
boils
sad.
my blood when I think about it.
Sad.
Yeah.
So sad.
Anyway. Okay. Next tweet.
Yes, next tweet. All right. Yes, this is from Rhonda Brownlee. While it was not included, while it's not included in the agreement for a women's league to be developed, this is from again Mr. Cochran, who confirms that the CSA CSB agreement did not include a requirement for CSB to develop a women's league, even though they were earning money off the promotion of the Canadian women's team. That is CSA misogyny. Stuff like this.
Is there anything more to add than what Rhonda said?
No, she kind of hit the nail on the head. But this is also kind of, when they talk about quote unquote modernizing the agreement, stuff like this is why I
was in 2018 this agreement.
And the stuff like this is why I'll believe it when I see it, because the Canadian women's team was already a hit. The Canadian women's team was already winning silverware.
They were the competent team.
Exactly, and you already started to see the rise of women's club soccer, and you knew that at this rate it was going to be a success. So CSB, not being forced to spend money on a women's league, while knowing that there will be one, because it's just an unavoidable fact is so
Yeah.
disingenuous.
It really is. No, I'm not going to use that word. How do you feel free?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna say something that I'm pretty sure you don't want to say on the air, but that you mentioned off the air a bit earlier. Can you show the picture back, please, Elias or Eve?
No, I would rather
Can
talk
you?
about like the women's soccer first,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. Okay, and then after, can I
Oh,
show
so
the
go
picture?
ahead. Go ahead.
No, for me, in 2018, to not be considering, even in the future, a women's league. Because admittedly, like 2020 happened, it didn't get any income. Okay. But in 2018, to not be considering a women's league is kind of abhorrent. It reeks
But in
of
2023, they're not considering either.
no, I
So
know. No, I know, but that's when the deal was struck.
even
So
worse.
no. Well, Dana Matheson took care of it for them. God love her.
Thank God.
Yeah, no. So that really disappointed me. The fact that there was just no consideration whatsoever. I liked to think that we were better than that as a country, but evidently not. And I mean, I wonder if that can be included in the modernization of this deal, because I
At the
think it
very least.
absolutely should. Canada, the women's national team, won 3 medals, 3 phenomenal medals. They also, of course, participated at all of the World Cups that they've been eligible to compete for between, or I should say both, because it was only 2, between 2012 and now. And of course, we'll be competing on another one imminently. And the men managed to compete at one World Cup and did not really make any waves at a continental competition. So
Semi-final, I think, at the Gold Cup, if I'm not mistaken.
yes,
That
semi-final. That was the most recent one, yeah. But I mean, the women were consistently making, quarterfinals at the World Cup, and they were making, semifinals and finals at the continental cup level, and of course,
at the Olympics.
I can't say anything more about the Olympics other than that they are gold medalists. So, just massive disrespect. Massive disrespect. Okay, here's your image, Hady.
Okay, this is someone representing Canada soccer. Look at all the scars behind him. I'm sorry, this is very disrespectful. Like, you're representing Canada. You have a DC United scarf. You have I don't know what behind you. No, I don't agree. I don't agree. This is very disrespectful.
Where does he have a DC United scarf?
I think United.
No, that's the World Cup one.
Oh, this is the World Cup. You're right. Okay, I thought it was a DC United one. You're right. So yeah, it's just something that really, you talked about a bit off the air, Eve, and I completely agree with you. And no, I don't think this is normal. There's something deeply wrong with that organization. Not only, of course, we're gonna talk. We talked a lot about the women's game, the women's national team, the women's league not being here, but it's even more profound. Like, it's bad on all levels, everywhere. There's nothing good going on with Canada soccer right now, unfortunately.
I'm struggling to find something, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And if they would give us something good, we'd talk about it, just to be clear, because we are fair.
Yeah. So if someone from Canada soccer wants to come on the pod and tell us what they're doing, please feel free.
Seriously.
Yeah.
All right, last tweet.
One last tweet. Yes, and this is a much happier one. This is from Namuyun. One of our buddies is at the Curacao match right now in the Voyager section with the one and only Alistair Johnston, who is in the supporter section, hanging out with the fans.
Love that.
Is it possible to not like Alistair Johnston? Because there's no way anybody. He's one of those soccer players who just does not have any haters, I feel.
Yeah.
We should ask Toronto FC fans if they love him or they hate him.
I feel like
they'd have to love him for the Canadian aspect.
I think
even
they
like Rangers fans can't possibly hate him. He's just such a nice dude. You know,
I okay, I think that would be a valid question to ask.
But yeah, it's
Okay.
just it's always nice to see players engaging with the fans in meaningful ways,
Yeah.
right? Not just like through social media, through lives, but in person,
Yeah,
right? And it,
showing
it
up.
just especially with your national team because it
Yeah.
shows that I'm it shows this sense of camaraderie and community, and it's always nice to see it, especially with someone who is one of the best players on that team, right? It's not just a reserve player, bench player, it is a star.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's great to see something like that.
Yeah,
Completely agree.
and hi to Namu, who's a great guy. He's the one that I reached out to when Bjorn Janssen signed with the CF Montreal to get a
Oh,
bit
really?
more insight on the player because he follows the K League, so the Korean League. So yeah, hi to him.
Right on.
So yeah. So very
Yeah,
interesting tweets. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Love
those
it.
are nice variety of discussion. There's always news going on, even if CF Montreal isn't playing. There's always
For sure.
something.
100%. Good guys. So I think this is gonna be the last item on our program today. Thanks a lot for all your help, Elias,
Always.
on Twitter and social media. Eve, love it when you talk about the Heritage Committee. So hopefully we'll get more next week. And of course, everyone that listened to us, thanks a lot for being here, for being so loyal, for always interacting with us and talking with us. Feel free, of course, to join our Patreons if you wanna help us grow the content and help us even become better and better. And that's it for today for this episode of The Ball is Round. I'll see you next week for episode 125 of The Ball is Round.